Be gracious. Don't necessarily call your opponents horrible names. Sometimes it happens. Not a very good thing. I do that sometimes. I sometimes engage in labeling. It's not very good. I'm not very proud of that. But of course, I'm constantly being labeled all kinds of things. But I try very much to work for dialogue and to be gracious with my adversaries. And this is something that you see in Nelson Mandela's life. I mean, he's the prime example of a gracious, civilized human rights activist who, in the face of the most horrible discrimination and torment, was able to look his opponents in the eye and treat them as human beings and engage in some kind of dialogue with them. Last, and here I'm going to end. The last rule for me, which I think is very important, is that if you're a human rights activist, you should try to shun money. You should turn your back on money. Everything that I do, my civil rights group, we don't have a budget. Refuse on principle. When I created this organization, I told every one of my board members that if you're going to join me in this fight, the one thing I want you to agree on is that we're not going to have money. No such thing. No such thing as a budget. We don't ask money from anybody. We don't accept donations. We certainly don't accept donations from power, from governments. It's all done on a voluntary basis because money has a tendency to corrupt. Okay? If you get close to it, you're going to get in some way corrupted by it. So we run by the seat of our pants. Everybody thinks that we're doing these wonderful things, and not wonderful, nasty things that we're doing on the opposition side. Somehow somebody's financing us. I'm often told through letters and to editors and whatever that I'm in the vest pocket of one of the opposition party leaders in Hungary, Mr. Gyurcsány. I met Mr. Gyurcsány at a party once. I had done nothing with him. I never received any money, and if he offered me to buy me a cup of coffee, I would say no, let me pay instead. I never accept money from anybody, and if you're working in human rights, you should do the same thing. Do it on a voluntary basis, and it's amazing how far you can run. Nothing costs money. All of the activities that I've done, we're on Google News today with our initiatives. About 20,000 people have heard of the things we've done in the past 2 days. Not a huge crowd, but a substantial crowd. All of that was done without money. Free. So forget about money. All right, I've spoken enough. Ask me.
I agree with everything you said.
I'm so happy.
However,
yes.
What you described in Hungary is happening here in Canada. We have a prime minister who has no respect for the rule of law. He muzzles scientists. He doesn't answer questions in Parliament. He targets any NGO that doesn't agree with him and takes away its funds. He subsidizes the oil sands that are making record profits. He has destroyed Canada in the 9 years that he's been here. And we have the same thing here in Quebec. We have a premier who did not run to disrupt and dismantle the whole system, and that he's doing it without a discussion, without asking civil society. I mean, we have a fiscal system that is makes the rich richer and the poor, and the inequalities are here in Canada. Even the OECD has made a reference to how inequalities are happening here in Canada and in Quebec, and we have a fiscal system where the rich hide their money in tax havens.
Can I just stop you for a second?
I just want to say these not for you. I know you know them, but for the audience.
Okay. Yes, that's very good. Listen, let me just.
We here in Canada, we have elections and we say we have a majority government with 39%. I mean, this is an aberration. How can you have a majority government with 39% of the vote? We have no proportional representation.
Nadia, listen, I'm not going to get into an argument with you on this. Let me say this, okay? That Hungary, and this is what I started with, is not unique. There are many cases. You know, there might be a person sitting here who says, but listen, what about Uganda? Somebody will say, what about Colombia? What about China? What about, you know, we could be here until 5 o'clock in the morning debating each country. I don't, you know, not out of disrespect, but I don't want to get into that discussion.
We have a history of democracy here that is being.
Okay, but what I'm
We need a question. How about a question?
What I'm trying to tell you is that depending on your point of view and where you're coming from and what the facts are in your possession, you may be entitled to have that point of view. But I'm not going to debate that right now, because then I'm going to have to debate with every single person here who has an agenda with a particular country. And I don't think that's why we're here, to run through the 360 countries in the world and see who's right and who's wrong. We're here, I think, to challenge my criticism of Hungary, because that's what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about Canada. Tell me that I'm wrong about Hungary. Tell me that I'm wrong about, and I don't see what human rights activists require. Tell me that I see the definition of human rights versus civil rights wrongly, and then we can have a discussion. I'm not going to engage in a discussion about other countries right now, because that's not what my talk was about. Yes?
Okay, just a quick one, and it is a question.
Yes.
I'm not the only one who thought of this. I'm sure the man at the side here had thought of the same thing. When you were persecuted in Hungary,
Yes.
it was not during an Orban Fidesz government. How did they manage to do it to you when they were out of power?
This happened when they were in power. In the first instance between 1998 and 2001. So that's when it first happened. When I wrote an article in Népszabadság, within a week I had a knock on my office from two, all kinds of trumped up charges. None of them they won, but it went up to the Supreme Court. One of the charges, which happened to be that I failed to notify the court of records of moving from one place in Budapest to another place. You know, a misdemeanor. I was hauled in like a criminal. So I go, and what the hell is going on? What the well, you know, so.
But you said stuff happened in 2006. How did they do it in 2006?
What I'm telling you now is 2001.
Yeah.
Okay? Orban government was in power from 1998 to 2002. We went through to the Supreme Court. Every time the court said Mr. Göllner is innocent, the prosecutor general, who is Mr. Orban's buddy, appealed the case. Went to the second level. The second level, the judge said, "What the hell is going on here? Doesn't the prosecutor general's office have better things to do than persecute an upstanding citizen who doesn't have any record, who's an academic, and who didn't know that we have a regulation that you have to notify, you know, whatever." So I was again free. They appealed again. Finally, went to the Supreme Court with 3 top judges.
What year was this?
2001.
All this 2000.
Yes.
Okay, don't talk about that anymore. I'm asking, what reach did that government have when it was out of power?
They had a very long reach because the guy who was the prosecutor general was in power all the way through until 2006. This is the prosecutor general who let off every single criminal in the first Orban government off the hook. There were all kinds of